Hello and welcome to the bonus episode for 460 of Conversation Street. I'm Gemma.
I'm Michael.
Today we're doing a classic character profile.
Yeah, it's very classic. It's Tanya Pooley.
It's Tanya Pooley. Oh, she's evil and beautiful.
This is a really kind of notorious Corrie villainess, isn't it? And it's someone who, up until fairly recently, until the repeats on ITV3, well, that was, I guess, a few years ago, I didn't really know very much about, apart from, oh, what a bitch.
Oh, she's so evil.
And you just come off the back of watching some of her episodes on our DVD journey,
I think
haven't
I
you?
watched quite a lot of what Tanya got up to. I didn't watch all of it, obviously, but I feel like I know her a bit better than some characters that are actually much more famous than she was. Because she was only in it for a year, but she was in it for quite a lot. Because she was a barmaid.
Yeah, and she had a couple of big stories, and then she was out. It was a very much kind of do your story, off you go then. And she's really kind of notorious in Coronation Street villainess history. Not that there is a huge, legacy of Corrie villainesses anyway.
I'm trying to think of how many. I mean, Maya's one, and who's that lady that got frozen?
Anne Malone.
Is she evil?
Yeah, kind of, but not at the beginning, really.
I think that Tanya's pretty bad, isn't she? She's pretty naughty.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Corrie villains that I had heard of but not seen any of when I was watching Corrie in the early days, Tanya was definitely a name that came up quite a lot, as was evil nurse, not nurse, what's her name, Nanny Carmel Finnan. And we've seen a bit of her, and I quite enjoyed watching her as well. Maybe we come to this later about
we've seen
discussing the lack of
Carmel, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
She was really made no impression on me.
No, but I think we probably only saw about 2 episodes of her, and her story was definitely a lot shorter.
Right, let's talk about
Tanya.
Tanya. So she what?
Oh no, I was
she's only got one.
What you were going to read?
One parent who's called Dennis. Dennis Pooley, and her mother was TBC. First appeared on the 31st of May 1993, last appeared on the 23rd of September 1994. She was in 142 episodes, and she was played by Eva Pope.
Yeah, 142 episodes. It really isn't much, is it? I think
it is a lot for a year.
I suppose. Year and a half, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose it says a lot for, the fact that she is so well remembered. And I think lots of people who watched at the time consider her a proper classic Corrie character, let alone villainess. Yeah, and I've been reading a few sort of forum threads and things from people who watched it back in the day and going, "Oh, Tanya was great. Tanya was amazing." So it just goes to show that even in this short time period, you can leave a lasting impression. And having watched her again, I can kind of see why.
I think it helps that she was very beautiful, and she had a quite alluring voice, didn't she? She had a very gravelly, deep voice.
Yes.
And she had
wait, you're not confusing her with Phyllis Pierce, are you? Because we did a character profile of her a couple of weeks ago.
That's me, Tanya Pooley.
Des.
No, she also had a pretty posh accent.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. But this is Eva Pope's first ever telly role, or at least first major one, as far as I can tell. So this is a great one to have as your debut, isn't it? She studied at the Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Art, don't you know?
Oh, good.
And then went straight into Coronation Street.
Yeah.
So we don't know very much about Tanya's backstory. We know that her parents split up when she was young, and she grew up rather a lonely child. And then after leaving school, she started working in a nightclub where she meets Alex Christie, who was a married bookkeeper. More on that to come later, because I think this was a little bit of... With Tanya's story, I wonder how much of it was planned in advance, kind of the arc of the character, because we know that they do plan Corrie a long time in advance, and the fact that this character was only there for, a year and a half, I wonder... what were the original plans for her? Did it always intend to go the way it did? And I tell you what, when I was watching it on ITV3, whenever it was, last year, let's say, although I enjoyed watching Tanya and I enjoyed her bitchiness and everything, I do remember that I didn't find her story particularly engaging right up until the climax, but I think I didn't get it. And doing a bit of research for this character profile today, I'm kind of unpicked and uncovered a lot more about the story of Tanya Pooley than I ever got from actually watching the episodes. And I think it's maybe to do with the fact that it was, with these ITV3 repeats, I'll often have them on like first thing in the morning. I'll be watching them at 1.5 speed or whatever, and I've missed little bits, and it kind of all makes sense now. And I go, oh, that's what happened. It actually sounds like quite a good little story arc for the character. So, I mean, do you want to take 1993 synopsizing, and I'll take 94, and I'll be interested to know how much of this you've gleaned from the little bits of her that we've watched over the last, month or two.
So 1993, this is when Liz goes to work at the Queen's, which is another pub where she's the manager there, and Tanya already is working there as a barmaid, and it turns out that she's a bitch.
Yeah. So she wasn't. So many barmaids are kind of brought into the Rovers. Here's the new barmaid, but it's a little bit different. She was already working at a bar that Liz had got a job at.
Pub.
Interesting fact: she was credited as Tanya, spelt Tania, for her first 6 appearances, and then they changed it.
She spells it with a Y.
I know. Why did they do that? I wonder.
I think it's because somebody didn't know how to spell Tanya, because usually it's spelled with a Y.
I think it has been known that spelling mistakes are made on credits, but for 6 weeks there are, I don't know. But she did have a bit of a little stint in this Queen story, and then she went quiet for a little bit before coming back to the Rovers. So, sorry, I interrupted you. What did she get up to at the Queen's, Gemma? Do tell.
Well, she stirs things up between Jim and Liz by suggesting that Liz used her womanly ways to get hold of the pub, and then Jim starts getting paranoid, and he is convinced that Liz and the manager Richard Wilmore are having an affair.
Yeah, so this is the Newton and Ridley manager. He reckons that Liz and him are,
Yeah, I just said having an affair.
I'm trying to think of a euphemism.
So he punches him. And then Liz is like, oh, I have to choose between Jim or the pub. And she's like, I'd rather have a pub.
Yeah,
At least the pub can't let me down.
Jim is quite handy with his fists. And when he thought that she was knocking boots with him, he knocked 10 bells out of him.
Tanya gets fed up working for Liz and canoodling. Who's canoodling?
Liz.
Liz is canoodling.
Liz canoodles with Colin Barnes.
Who's Colin Barnes?
Colin Barnes, Des Barnes' brother.
Des Barnes' brother.
Yeah, can you remember? He came in for like his tiny little amount in the early 90s. He returns in the late 90s. But yeah, he and Liz have a bit of an affair.
So she's like, I'm the best barmaid. I want a job.
Yeah,
Where?
the Rovers.
Why?
I think maybe I should have shown you these notes beforehand.
I don't get it.
She's like, I'm not working at the Queen's anymore,
Why?
Liz.
What's Liz got to do with the Rovers?
She's nothing. Right, the story is, Tanya is working at the Queen's,
so
right?
She's like, I'm leaving.
Liz comes and says, I'm managing this. Hey you, Colin Barnes. And Tanya's like, I'm not dealing with this. I think she fancied Colin Barnes a little bit herself. So she said she didn't want to be working there at the Queen's anymore, watching Liz with her tongue down this bloke's neck. And so she goes down to the Rovers and says, Oi, Bet, I'm the best barmaid round these parts.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that
Give
bit.
me a job.
So she says, I'm the best barmaid in the whole world. And Bet should have said that Betty's the best barmaid because she's like an award-winning barmaid.
Mm.
And so she gets a trial period. And Jack's like...
Yeah, Jack's
the potman, isn't he?
I can't. I guess
Whatever.
he was around there. He was his usual lusty self around her. There was quite a lot of barmaids that were taken on during Jack's time there that he thought he had a chance with,
He's
and he was
so
like,
gross.
"Let me show you how to work the pumps, lass." And
She's the best barmaid in the area. She doesn't need any help.
I think back in Jack's early days, he would sometimes be more successful at seducing the women, wouldn't he? Didn't he even get into bed with Bet that one time?
He hasn't sort of pitched his attentions to women of a similar look and appearance to him.
No.
He's kind of still going for the same girls that he was going for when he was 20 years younger. So Tanya kind of hints to Bet that Liz was being horrible about her to stir the pot. And then she attracts the attention of Des Barnes.
Yes, Des Barnes, the third. This is all about Des, Tanya and Raquel is Tanya's story, isn't it?
So he says, come out for a meal. And she's like, no, I won't. And then she gets annoyed because Raquel's modelling, and I think Tanya's just jealous and she thinks she's prettier than Raquel is.
Yeah, I think I've got a feeling that for the first few months that Tanya was on the show, Raquel was away from it. I may be wrong here. So she's kind of got her feet under the table a little bit, and then Raquel comes back, sort of talking about this amazing modelling career
I've just been
that
off
she's
doing
at.
some modelling with my nice hair and my lovely eyes.
And Raquel always used to see bar work as a bit of a stepping stone towards the greater life of a model, and
Whereas Tanya's like a best barmaid
nothing wrong
ever.
with being a barmaid.
I think Tanya wanted to be a wife.
Yeah, a rich wife.
Yeah.
A looked after wife.
What a bloody good idea that would be. So she's making fun of Raquel for being ditzy and wanting to be a model, because it seems rather far-fetched, really, to be honest. And then she hears that Raquel is interested in Des, so she starts dating him out of spite just to annoy her. And then she tricks Raquel into thinking that she's got a job modelling at Armani.
So if a few years ago you'd said, tell me a story, tell me what Tanya gets up to, this is one of her most famous episodes, I think, isn't it? And it's one of the stories as well that I think maybe got you more interested in Raquel, because right through the 90s episodes that we were watching, I remember you saying that you haven't seen much of Raquel, you don't think much of Raquel, but this particular episode...
I don't get why Raquel's like... I mean, I know why she is, because I've seen other bits of her, but I'm watching it going, there's nothing about Raquel in these episodes that makes me go, oh wow, legend.
Yeah, but this particular episode, I think, when she gets tricked by Tanya, so she goes just breaks your heart.
Armani modelling shoot, which is at a greengrocer's. And everyone's like, why is it at greengrocers? It's very suspicious. And she's like, no, that's just how they do it. Because I can just imagine a really pretentious fashion shoot taking place with cabbages in the background. So she turns up in the middle of the night wearing all her fancy gear, and then it becomes apparent that it was all a big ruse, and it was actually Armani the...
Yeah, because there's a great scene where, back in the Rovers, where... Tanya is like telling Des what she's done, and she's so proud of herself for
she thinks it's hilarious
for pulling this trick on Raquel, and Des is also a bit of a practical joker as well, isn't he? We've seen with the Wilton, so I think she thought that he would also see the funny side, but he just calls her a bitch and goes chasing after Raquel to bring her home.
And raped, or the other way around. So he goes and rescues her, and then they end up dating. And so Raquel's like, why would you do this to me? And Tanya says, because I'm sick and tired of you looking down your nose at the rest of us, going on about how you're not a real barmaid, you're really a model. What you really are, love, is an over made up tart. That's all you'll ever be, so you better get used to it. That's really mean. She's so mean. Raquel has to dress up as a Christmas elf for a modelling joke, and
modelling job.
Sorry, modelling joke. So she makes fun of her, but then actually Raquel gets the last laugh because she enjoys it, because she hangs out with kids.
Yeah. So by the end of 1993, they've set up this fantastic antagonistic partnership between Tanya and Raquel.
Yeah, because there was nothing redeemable about Tanya at all. She was just really mean-spirited, and I can kind of imagine how you would feel if you had to stand behind the bar with this woman who is really, let's be honest, pretty stupid, but thinks she's so great, and everyone else loves her.
Oh, she's got a heart of gold.
A simpering idiot, and you're just as equally as beautiful, but everyone hates you because you're a horrible old bitch. You would get mad, wouldn't you?
In many ways, it's really, really understandable, and I don't, obviously, as a massive Raquel fan, I don't in any way condone Tanya's behaviour. I feel really sorry for Tanya,
because everything that happens to her is her own fault for being horrible, but she clearly has a narcissistic personality disorder or something. She's got some kind of weird personality problem.
There were definitely points during her year and a half on the show where you were supposed to feel sorry for her and realise that she's just been dealt a bad lot in life, really, apart from in the looks department. It's her own
fault. She's like a compulsive liar.
Some people are just like that, aren't you?
Yeah, they are.
And having to work with this person, you're right, who everybody loves, despite...
And really, I think
not
Tanya...
having two brain cells to rub together, it'd make you jealous.
Tanya values her own looks quite highly, I think. And she's annoyed because they're both equally as good looking, but somehow Raquel gets more attention and everyone likes her more, even though she doesn't really factor in the personality problems that she has compared to Raquel, so she doesn't get why everyone's so nice to Raquel.
Yeah, exactly. So this leads us to 1994 then, and this is part of this that when I was watching, I don't think I got. So she starts off the year by renting the flat above Jim's cafe, and there are hints on the show that something going on, because we see her having this phone call with someone saying, "Oh, I found the perfect place," and I think that's supposed to be a bit of a mystery. And back when you watch that in the day and she's speaking, saying, I've got somewhere, you're supposed to think, oh, who's talking to? What's going on? But I think at the time when I was watching this a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, I've missed what's supposed to be happening here. I don't know who she's talking to. I couldn't have been paying attention then. And it was kind of from that point onwards that I kind of lost track of what was happening and maybe lost interest a little bit in the Tanya story.
We become a cropper when this happens, because it's quite often that we're not paying attention and we don't know if it's supposed to be mysterious or if we're just being thick.
But from having a look at this on Corriepedia, I think this is supposed to be mysterious at the moment. Okay, so a month later, to compound the mystery, Alma goes up into the flat. So Alma, who obviously rented the flat out to Tanya, and it looks like it's barely been lived in. So what happened? What we kind of get from this is that Tanya has just been using this flat as a love nest. And Alma worries that just somewhere to do your shaggins.
No.
Yeah, and Alma worries that Tanya may be prostituting herself. So that's she kind of confronts.
You mean to use
she might be sex working herself. She might be on the game. She might be a lady of the night. Anyway, however you want to call it. Tanya tells Alma to keep her nose out when she confronts her about it. So a couple of weeks after this, Tanya's dad turns up at the Rovers, calling her a slut. And Tanya,
that's so rude.
And this is when it all comes out what's been going on. Tanya has been caught by her dad seeing this man who's married with two kids. It's this Alex Christie, the person that we learned that she met in a nightclub a couple of years ago.
Oh, God.
And initially she'd held off dating this chap because she didn't want to break up a marriage in the same way that her own parents' marriage had been broken up. So she had a bit of a conscience to her, believe it or not. But she ended up starting an affair because he was so irresistible and rugged and cockney.
You don't get points for going, this is a bad idea, but I'll do it anyway.
and it turns out she's been seeing this guy for like half a year or something. And now Coronation Street these days sometimes like to throw in the fact that someone's been having a secret affair for, quite a while. I'm thinking of Sharif's 7-year affair with Sonia. So, I mean, only half a year this person, Tanya, who we thought we knew, has been going out with some other guy. Probably felt like a lot, but it could have been worse.
I don't understand this, because does he have somewhere to go then?
Who?
This man, Alex Christie.
Well, he can't go to his own house because his wife's there.
But then why has it been barely lived in, this flat?
Well, I think Tanya's living with her dad.
Oh.
So and then they rent this place and says let's come up to my love nest above the calf.
That's stupid. Alex Christie's like, I do love you, Tanya, but I can't shag in a house you live in.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
It's illicit.
Every time I come round
secretive.
here, there's cups in the sink and it puts me right off.
Maybe the smell of sausage grease and chip fat
are
a bit of a turn on for them. I don't know. Anyway,
she's like, I can't stay here full time. It's too erotic.
She ends up having to move in there because, as I said, her dad throws her out. So this is now Tanya's permanent place. Well, as permanent as you can get as a character that's going to be leaving the show in about 6 months' time, never to return. But anyway, meanwhile, Des and Raquel, you remember we said they were going out after the Armani incident. Things are starting to hot up a little bit more, and he moves her into his house, number 6, Coronation Street. Tanya is jealous of this.
Of course she is, because she's there. All she's got is like half a bloke.
Yeah.
With a little flat, and now Raquel's got a house and a man.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, poor Raquel, she thinks that she's got it made for life as well, hasn't she? And that this is the story of Raquel and Des. She thinks that this is wonderful. She's going to stay with him. They're going to settle down, have a family, have kids together or whatever.
She's very domestic.
And Des really, although he's a nice guy in many ways, and apparently Phil Middlemass said, who plays Des, that he got a lot of sympathy through this story. Lots of viewers at the time were kind of on Des's side.
I don't get this because he's a dog. I don't get this at all. He
was a cheeky chaffy, wasn't he? I don't know. I was never a big fan of Des, to be honest. But anyway, Tanya, who feels like Raquel has stolen her man in a way, is fed up because Alex is also increasingly choosing his own wife over her. So she starts to get really jealous of this too. He says that we're going to go on a trip to Amsterdam together, which he then cancels. So she's like, this isn't the life that I wanted, really. There's only so much booty calling that you can have before you get fed up and want a little bit more, maybe.
Oh, I hate it when the guy you're dating wants to spend time with his other family.
I know, it sucks. That's why I don't have affairs, everyone. It's too much hard work.
It's too much. I can't listen. I find things complicated when, like, I have a subscription that comes out every 4 weeks instead of every month. That's too complicated for me. I can't imagine having an affair. It's too much hard work.
Thank goodness for that. I'm glad, darling, that that's the only reason that's holding you back.
Yeah, it's too much. Too much hassle.
Tanya is like, right, I'm going to make my move on Des Barnes. So Raquel one day is away on a modelling contract in Birmingham. Tanya plies Des with drinks, get a takeaway, takes him back to her flat, and stays the night with him.
Takeaway, you could get me with those, to be honest.
Des feels guilty about this, but he's like, well, I'm going to carry on seeing both women. So this is like the most complicated love triangle kind of thing ever. So you've got Alex Swinton is married and seeing Tanya. Des is seeing Raquel and Tanya. Oh, that's it. Maybe it sounded more complicated. That's still pretty complicated.
It's not that complicated.
So Tanya knows that she's seeing both of them. Does Des know that she's seeing Alex? I don't even know whether he does at the moment. But anyway, Des also offered more than just sex and money too. He kind of did offer a loving relationship. Alex wasn't really interested in that. I get the picture. He was just interested in a bit of how's your father with a younger woman. So Tanya is kind of happy with this relationship. She doesn't see Raquel as a threat whatsoever. And throughout all this, Raquel is remaining blissfully ignorant, sort of under the delusion that Des is going to be proposing to her any minute now. She does know that Tanya is seeing two women, though. Not two women, two men, sorry. She knows that Tanya's got... Raquel. She knows that Tanya's got two men on the go, because I can't remember how she finds out. I don't know whether Tanya kind of confides in her a little bit. And she feels sorry for Tanya. And this is the kind of the cringy bit of it. She's being cheated on by Des with Tanya, and Raquel feels sorry for Tanya for having to share her man. It was quite nicely plotted, actually. So she says to Tanya, look, you should just give up Alex, really, and go and stick with your other man, whoever that is. Now, things take a turn for the better for Tanya a little bit later in the year, because Tanya tells her he's going to leave his wife for her. Brilliant.
Whatever.
At the same time, though, Des decides that he wants Tanya for himself. Then Alex is like, oh no, actually I can't do it. I can't leave my wife. Sorry. So she's
I think it's more like his kids that he didn't want to leave.
Quite possibly, yeah. So she's being pulled this way and that, which again, like we were saying earlier, you do feel a little bit sorry for her during some of this. So Tanya decides to finish with Alex and go full time with Des. But then Alex dumps himself on her, saying, no, I am actually finished with my wife.
Oops.
So she's like, can I move into your flat now, darling? And she's like, I was just about to leave you for Des. So Des is fed up with this. He's been having all these illicit phone calls with Tanya. He thinks that maybe she's going to go full time with him and he's going to have to let Raquel down. But he's like, I can't, what's going on? Now you got Alex staying with you. So this leads us to another fantastic scene. And this was really the climax of this love triangle, quadrangle thing, which we watched just recently. Des goes over to Jim's cafe, lets himself into the flat and confronts Alex and Tanya in bed. And he's like, what are you doing? Get out of bed. She's my woman. She's mine. She's supposed to stay with me. Little does Des know that Raquel has followed him. She's snuck out behind him, followed him up to the flat. And this is how it gets broken to her.
Awful. This was
Des, her boyfriend, has got another woman.
This is the most Sophie thing I've seen on Coronation Street, because you've got Alex and Tanya in bed together while Des comes in and starts shouting at them, and then Raquel comes in and starts crying pitifully because she now worked out that he's having an affair. So everyone's shouting at each other and Tanya's just in bed like, oh, damn it.
That also leads to the most fantastic Coronation Street fight that we've seen so far.
Yes.
Like, up until that point, that was the best. I know there's some classic Curry fights, like, you know, mostly Ken and Mike, to be honest. But usually that's like a punch and that's it, isn't it? But this was a proper choreographed rumble through the cafe.
I talked about this when we talked about the first half of the 90s recently.
Yeah, just recently.
But it really was one of the best fights I've ever seen on Coronation Street. And it's a testament to like the choreography of the fight itself and how much time they gave to it. Because honestly, I didn't care who won and I wasn't that bothered. I didn't really know who Alex was. Des, I don't care one way or the other about him. So it wasn't like I had a personal stake in like why they were fighting each other or what would happen. But just the whole fight, they were collapsing all over the place, rolling around on the floor.
It was awesome.
Fantastic.
Alex calls Tanya a whore in the middle of it as well, because she thinks that maybe she can stick with him and he's like, no, I'm not interested.
She's got the choice
anymore.
between two blokes. I think she wanted Alex because he's got more money.
He had the money, but I think she knew as well that Des had the heart a little bit more.
I don't know if that comes into it. I think she's probably just thinking, oh, he's got kids. Ugh.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a.
Well, it's a doubt. If you're Tanya, that's a tick in the no column, isn't it? Because not only does it mean that he's going to be financially supporting them until they're of age, but it also means she's going to have to share his love with somebody else, which I think, given her ego, I don't think she'd cope very well with having to share.
Yeah, you're right. So we're left after the aftermath of this fight, utterly, heartbroken for poor Raquel, who goes crying to Bet in the middle of the night, has to come down the stairs with her hair down and everything.
Oh, this was awful, because she knocks on the door in the middle of the night and Bet comes down and she's like, and Raquel's sobbing and Bet gives her a hug and like this vengeful look on Bet's face. She's like, that Tanya Pooley.
But you also do feel just a slight bit sorry for Tanya as well, because
she's there
it's her fault. But...
she's there in the kitchen, like chain smoking, with her head in her hands, like going, "Ow!" Like this is like 6 months worth of conniving that has now gone down the drain.
How can I fix this situation? How can I turn it to my advantage? I know I'm going to punch myself, tell everybody it was Des that's attacked me, go over to the Rovers and then lay it on thick, so turn on the waterworks to try and get Bet and Raquel to believe her that she's been beaten up by Des. Bet can pretty much see through her, but Raquel, poor naive innocent Raquel, is like, oh, you poor thing.
Oh no, she's so.
Oh, Bet, look after her here. So Tanya, lucky thing, gets to stay on at the Rovers.
You mean working there?
Yeah.
But you make it sound.
I can't remember whether she's lived.
I think she keeps her flat, doesn't she?
I can't remember whether she keeps her flat.
Throws her out eventually.
Yeah, no, I think she does, because I think some of what we see later goes on in that flat. So there's a little bit of tail end to the Alex story, because he ends up suing Des. No, sorry, he sacks Des, who is trying to sue Alex for unfair dismissal, because after all this massive fight, Alex... did I say that he was his boss? Maybe
no.
I didn't. That's probably quite important, everybody. Alex was Des's boss at the bookies. That's the extra kink in
when Raquel walked in on this, she's like, oh, it's Des's boss in bed with
yeah, that's an important point.
Tanya,
Sorry, I missed
and
that.
Des is mad about it.
So Alex has sacked Des. Des is suing him for unfair dismissal. He tries to convince Tanya to lie for him in court, but she's like, no thanks, sunshine. Anyway, Alex ends up offering Des an out-of-court settlement. So that's the end of that. That was a bit boring, but I thought it was important, just in case anyone's thinking, what happened to Alex? So, Raquel goes off to another modelling course again later in the year, gets thrown off of it. I can't remember why she... what Tanya was saying before about, everyone has these aspirations for fame and stardom and the glamorous life of modelling that Raquel thinks is just waiting for her around the corner, but actually it's only a few people that actually get there, isn't it?
Well, Raquel is a very sweet person, but this is like if your kid was saying, Mummy, I'm going to be a YouTuber, you'd be like,
Some people
Still
become
go to
YouTubers.
university though.
Yeah, and I think also by this point Raquel was 28 or so,
Past it.
a bit past it in the old modelling game. It's
She was past it when she got to 21 and she hadn't
So
in.
she has to leave this modelling course, and then she ends up working in some grotty dive pub in London somewhere. So Bet goes and rescues her, brings her back to the Rovers. Tanya obviously isn't impressed by this. She thought that she'd maybe seen the last of her nemesis Raquel, and announces to everyone in a brilliant scene that the real reason why Raquel has returned is because she's been thrown off this course. Des calls her a bitch, and Bet gives her a brilliant dismissal from the Rovers, doesn't she?
Well, this was like really painful because Tanya sort of announces this to everybody as like a really triumphant joke.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Like, don't you join me as we all laugh
Yeah.
at horrible Raquel? Isn't she stupid and ugly? And everyone just looks at her like she's disgusting, and then yeah, she gets called a bitch, and then she gets fired, and literally nobody in the pub defends her.
And it's
all
like
just stare
silence,
at her.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And this was Bet at her commanding
This
best,
was her,
just
look,
like
totally ruthless.
yeah, it is.
Like, I'll give
Stony
you too
faced,
many chances here.
Not joking with you.
Yeah.
You're sacked.
And you're only here because blimmin'
Raquel took pity on you in the first place.
You owe everything to her, and you still can't be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's physically impossible for her. It's like literally she can't be nice to anybody.
But this is not the end of Tanya. Oh no, her final act of
Revenge.
nastiness and revenge is to seduce Bet's boyfriend, Charlie Whelan, who's this trucker that took her to a Dolly Parton look-alike contest.
Because he took Bet to it.
Yes, not
Not
Tanya.
Tanya
She didn't look
Pooley.
that much like Dolly Parton.
No.
I don't know how many drinks that you have. He kind of felt a bit sorry for Tanya, the way that Bet was so ruthless.
It's very easy to
towards
feel
her.
sorry for Tanya because no matter what we tried to say, there's something about a young, good-looking woman, especially if she's very slight and frail, is you feel sorry for her when she's sad.
And
We're just hardwired. There's something wrong with our biology that we can't help on.
I think if I'm remembering rightly, and I don't know whether we watched this together or whether you can back me up, was it Charlie that told Tanya the reason why Raquel had been come back from London? It wasn't Bet. I think Bet wanted to keep it a secret. There's no reason why Bet would have gone telling Tanya.
Charlie's one of these stupid men who just judge people by the way they look, and so he can't believe that Tanya is that bad, and he feels sorry for her.
Yeah, he thinks that she's had a bit of a raw deal.
And despite all the obvious evidence to the contrary, like everyone hates her, she's been ostracised from the community.
Yeah, but he's also still smarting
feels
because Bet's not happy with him for revealing Raquel's secret to her mortal enemy, which is fair enough.
Also, he's been tied down by Bet to sort of stay at the Rovers, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be a trucker. And so he feels trapped by Bet.
Yeah, so he ends up snogging Tanya Pooley. I think she kind of seduces him more than the other way around, but he doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't resist.
This is because she feels like she's lost control over the situation, and she literally can think of nothing else to do but to sort of throw herself on the mercies of another man. And the only way she can think of to get him to help her is if he fancies her and thinks that they're dating.
Yeah, so
that's what she does.
She convinces him to take her to Hamburg with him, where he's going on one of his trucker jobs, which he does. And I think doesn't he go back to tell Bet and the Rovers and tells Tanya to stay in the truck, but she still walks in there and
she's like, I'm going to stir it up.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know.
Yeah, but so they drive off to Hamburg together, and like within weeks, Charlie is back in Weatherfield begging for Bet's forgiveness because Tanya's dumped him.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the last we heard of her, really. And the final brilliant scene in this story, I suppose, is the one where Bet and Raquel then proceed to get drunk in the Rovers together that night, both spurned women. One of the best ever scenes on Coronation Street, basically, and that is it for poor old Tanya. Well, no, it's not poor old Tanya.
No, like I said,
cowbag Tanya.
She's a horrible, but it does show your like cultural bias that people have. Well, I think this is pretty universal, that we feel sorry for women when they do horrible things, and it's easier to kind of forgive them or make excuses. Whereas if it was a guy, you'd be like, oh, he's horrible.
Well, she had her excuses of all my family's. My
that's
parents
rubbish.
split up when I was young.
What?
I was a lonely child.
What does that mean? Did she not have siblings?
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's called an only child then, isn't it? Not a lonely child.
So Eva Pope's exit apparently came as a bit of a surprise to fans in 1994, and even some of the cast were pretty shocked too. It was kind of a bit out of nowhere. And I was reading an interview with her back in one of the old Corrie magazines the other day, and Eva Pope said at the time that the decision to leave was made before I knew my contract was going to be renewed.
So they wanted her to stay for longer, but she said,
yeah.
So the decision to leave, that was her decision.
Yeah. She says it was purely and simply because I felt that at my age, without any ties or anything to hold me down, it'd be good to limit my time on Coronation Street and experience other kinds of work. I've loved my time on the series, I've worked with some high-class people, with the writers, directors and actors, and I've learnt an awful lot from them.
That's nice.
Yeah, so she just wanted to spread her wings and try other things, which she did. She's had a few film roles since then, but she's mostly been concentrating on TV, including Dream Team, which I think was a Sky One football thing. She played a character called Stephanie Jacobs in that for 64 episodes. So that was a big old regular role. That was like in the late 90s. That wasn't long after she left Corrie, actually, 97, 98. She had regular roles on Peak Practice, Bad Girls, Waterloo Road. She was in that for 52 episodes, playing Rachel Mason. And Hetty Feather, which is some Jacqueline Wilson spin-off TV show or something. And I know she was a nasty matron in that. I think she might have been, I haven't seen any of this, but I think she might have been a head teacher in Waterloo Road. Maybe a nasty head teacher.
I don't know.
I think she didn't want to get typecast as bitch in Coronation Street, which is why she left the programme. And I think she's maybe had a mixture of roles since then. But she plays bitch so well. So
I always think it's interesting when actors say, I don't want to get typecast, because I think if someone's going to give you money to do that, take it. Because the thing is, the other option is you don't get cast at all, isn't it?
Well, there are some characters that have been known for playing, wide variety. I mean, look at Sarah Lancashire. While we're on the subject of Raquel,
yeah,
she
but
does not.
That's a rare example, isn't it?
Yeah, she has not played anyone, as far as I know, quite like Raquel. Since
I mean, it'd be nice. It'd be nice if you got to have lots of different things, just because it'd be more interesting for you. But
it depends. What's more interesting, the money or your acting craft?
Well, I think that a lot of people would say that it's nice to be able to eat.
Very, very true. So, did you quite like Tanya? I'm kind of picking up from the few episodes that we saw.
The thing is about saying I like her and sort of talking about why I think she did what she did, and saying I felt sorry for her at times. I don't. It's easy to get the wrong impression from that. And think that I condoned anything she did but obviously not. I just think that characters like this are far more interesting than, people that are just nice.
Yeah,
and
she's
kind
a very
of dull.
Morally grey.
Really interesting. I think Corrie, I don't know, I think was Corrie better at making people more complex and less likeable? That at the time we're watching this, there's quite a few young women in it, and none of them are like, not many of them are just like, oh, she's just really a nice person who's unlucky in love. They're all like, what's her face? Who's always got a sour face on. What's her name?
There could be so many. Leanne? Aggie?
No, in the 90s.
Oh, back in the 90s? I don't know.
Fiona.
Oh, yeah, Fiona is a bit of a
she's always moaning, and what's her face? He's rich. Little girl, rich girl.
Vicky.
Yeah, you know what I mean? They're all like, sometimes they do stuff and you're like, oh, for God's sake, you're really annoying.
Yeah.
And stupid. But I think in Corrie now, they tried to make women, I don't know, I'm talking out my bum now, I think. But I think girls are a bit more boring on Corrie now.
There are certainly few bitchy characters or like we said earlier, villainesses. The reason that I wanted to talk about Tanya Pooley this week is we're starting to see a little bit more of Daisy, and some people have made comparisons between Daisy and Tanya, and it's obviously very early days.
Yeah, good.
But it's a young, attractive lady working in a pub. Doesn't seem to have a nice word to say to anyone. Although, I mean, at the moment with Daisy, we're just feeling that she's a little bit one note.
I don't know.
With how she's
You are.
I am with how she's saying to Jenny, "Oh, dumped Johnny,"
him.
blah blah blah. But I don't know. I think that Daisy could have the potential to be a Tanya alike, and I think that'd be fine because it is, coming up to 30 years since Tanya first came into the programme. It's between 25, 30 years ago, and maybe we're overdue a character like that. Obviously, the biggest bitch on Coronation Street has been Tracy, who has been softened a lot recently, and I'm sure that if Tanya Pooley had stayed in there, they probably would have softened her a little bit as well at some point. I mean, Tracy we both love, don't we?
Yeah, but she's not really a bitch now.
She can be, and when she comes out with these bitchy one-liners, now it's great. But I'm kind of glad that, because I don't know, is anybody like that completely in real life in all aspects of their life? Luckily, I don't know anybody like that.
I want to also just quickly talk about the double standards of, like, and we've talked about this before, of villains in Coronation Street, and it is clear and obvious that if you're a man, the worst thing you can do is kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
But if you're a lady, the worst crime possible is being mean to people, which seems to be like what most of these women have done.
And I don't think it's the same on the other soaps. I don't know why Corrie has still never had a big proper bad be a woman. The Corrie Rogues gallery is full of men, and
I am
feels
so
crazy.
excited to see. There's got to be one, and we've, we waited 60 years for the first black family. We're still waiting for the first lesbian wedding. When are we going to get the first proper murderous, multi-murdering, conniving, proper evil Corrie villain? I mean, Tracy's killed somebody.
Tracy was a killer.
Yes.
Maya Sharma. She didn't even kill anyone, did she? She just set
throws
shops on
Yeah.
fire.
I mean, that's just fun.
Kirsty Soames we had.
I mean,
she was good.
She was domestic abuser, but at the end of it, she I learned the error of my ways. Do they ever bother to redeem men like this? Not really.
No, they kill them off.
Yeah.
And
it is a double standard.
Yeah.
But this is but it's not. It's endemic to society as a whole. This is why people kick off when you have a female serial killer in America who is on death row or gets executed. Everyone throws their hands up in the air.
But in other soaps they've done it. We've just had in Hollyoaks, not that we watch it, this amazing story with Breeder McQueen being the serial killer.
It's amazing.
It got a lot of awards, and I watched it thinking, I love that actress. I wish Corrie had her.
But
I wish
if
they had
they
that
did
story.
is Coronation Street worried don't want to do a murdering serial killer lady because they'll say I copied them.
But it shouldn't be copying, should it? Because
they copied everything else.
Well,
there's lots of similar stories that go on in soaps all the time.
Nobody says that they copied them because it's a man doing a serial killing story or a man does the villain. So why not? In Emmerdale, you got Kim Tate, haven't you? Played by what's her face? It was Erica Claire King. Exactly. She went away for a while and now is back again. I don't know whether she's any good or not. In her
what does she do?
I don't know. Literally, I know nothing about her apart from sometimes we turn over to Emmerdale just before Corrie's about to start and we go, look, there's Erica.
She's there going,
sneering.
See, I want a woman to be a villain on Corrie, and it isn't just she's so mean to people.
What do you want? Do you want it to be a killer?
I want her to be a serial killer, or I would like her to be like a ruthless business person, kind of like Debbie.
Yeah, I mean,
but Debbie's too nice. She's like, oh, so sorry.
Debbie has been redeemed a bit now, hasn't it? So it's a bit too late. I mean, she's still got that ruthless streak in her. So, I mean, something else could come along that could, deflect her back to the dark side again. But then equally, Daisy could go that way as well. And it's funny as well that a lot of these women villains that I've got on my list here were also such quick characters, weren't they?
Yeah.
Like Anne Malone, she didn't do much. She came in, fawned after Andy for a little bit, and then she had a crush on Curly, tried to tamper with his freezer, gets iced off, and that's it. Over and done within a few years. Kirsty Soames, year, 2 years maybe she was in it. Kaz Hammond, remember her? That who was it? Kate's girlfriend,
fiance, who was a
6 months
soldier,
was she in it?
who
Yeah,
lied
maybe.
and tried to set Maria up.
Yeah, for killing her. Maya Sharma wasn't in it for long. Jade recently as well. 6,
kidnapper.
7, 8 months gone. Tracy Barlow is the closest that we've got to a long-term Corrie villain, and in a way the fact that she has got such length, I mean she has been in the show without much of a break since the 1970s, and I'm not saying she was a massive bitch when she was 10 years old or anything like that, but for me, when I think of the classic Corrie villains, they've got a good 2, 3, 4 maybe a year stint of villainousness. And there's just nothing like that on Coronation Street. It's crazy. I
think, you're saying like, oh, is Daisy going to be a villain? I can just imagine Daisy being a villain the same way that Tanya was, where she's just mean and she seduces your boyfriend and sleeps around. But I also want to say that's exactly what Adam Barlow did earlier this year, and he's not considered a villain.
No, I know.
Like, you see what I'm saying?
The thing with Tanya is that I don't think she'd have been half as good or well remembered if they didn't have Raquel.
Yeah.
That was she
really
was the utter
idea,
foil to her villainousness. And she was so naive, which Tanya took advantage of, and she was so beloved.
Yeah. But they've got the perfect setup then with Emma.
I know, and I don't know, would people say, oh, this is just like Tanya and Raquel again? Because already so many comparisons are drawn between Emma and Raquel, but they're not really that much similar, are they?
You can't just never have the same... Look...
I think the time is okay for it to happen again.
30 years ago, and then you've got like us saying, can we stop having people dying of horrible medical conditions and like dying? I mean, even if you're just taking dying of cancer, we've had 3 characters die of cancer in the last 5 years or however long, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that if you're gonna complain about repeating stories, let's tackle that problem first.
I do think that maybe the time could be right to have that sort of relationship again, and if we have Daisy versus Emma, that could be quite
really
fun.
satisfying.
And the problem with it at the moment is, of course, with all the COVID restrictions and everything, you can't have them together. There is only ever seems to be one person behind the bar on duty at the same time, doesn't there? Like you don't have the 2 or even especially not 3 barmaids there together. So and I can't remember whether have we seen any of Daisy and Emma together. I don't really remember. So maybe that's one for the future once whatever's going on with her and Johnny is over and done with.
I just think Tanya Pooley, great character, fun to watch.
Yeah, we've kind of gone off the subject of Tanya a little bit now.
Really complicated character. I mean, calling her a villain is a bit unfair because
no.
Well, if you're gonna, then every single man character who wasn't married has been a villain.
But just that how horrible she was and nasty.
It's because
and
you expect
fun of Raquel.
Yeah, it's because you expect her to be nice because she's a woman, Michael.
I don't know.
It is.
But would you like to see her come back? Because I think apparently Eva Pope has been asked on numerous occasions. According
she couldn't
to
come back
Corrie
now. What would she come back for?
I don't know.
Nobody would know who she was.
No. Well.
Who's left?
No,
I mean,
really
Sally would go, I think I remember you.
Yeah, I guess. Well, yeah. I wonder whether that could be an interesting setup for a character return. That only the viewers know who she is, and all the characters are blissfully ignorant.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
She might as well come back as a completely new character.
I mean, she's gone on to do so many other great TV shows, and I think she said that she didn't want to come back as Tanya because apparently like Brian Parkhurst back in the a couple of years after she left, she's like, no, I don't want to be typecast. Maybe now could be the right time. I don't know what the last.
Well, they could get her to play a different character.
No, I don't think that would work. I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to become the producer.
I think bring her back as Tanya.
Somebody different.
Ruffle some feathers again or something. I think it could be quite fun actually.
Well, she's going to have to be poaching the older ladies' men.
Yeah.
She can't get after Maria and Emma's boyfriends.
No.
Mind you, Maria's getting on, isn't she?
Right. I think we're done then. That's our rundown of Tanya Pooley.
Oh, wasn't she horrible?
Well, she was proper horrible.
Wasn't she just a horrible, horrible cow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just want to like congratulate her for somebody who had such a a relatively minor role, probably going down in Coronation Street history. I think everyone's heard of Tanya Pooley, haven't they, for one reason or another? So she's done a good job.
Yeah.
I think. Right, we are done. We are going to finish with this. So we are going to say, if you have got anything to add about Tanya Pooley, if there's anything about the story that we've missed, or anything that you particularly enjoyed or you remember or stood out to you, do you want to have Tanya Pooley back? What do you think she might add if she returned to the show now? Give us a bell on conversationstreet@gmail.com, or the other many channels of communication that are open to you, like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And maybe we can read something out on the show. Done.
Done.
Done. Done. Thank you, everybody, for listening.